Morning dog parents. This video is all about what to do if your dog is bitten by a snake in the UK, and more importantly, how to avoid it happening in the first place. Let's get into it. Now, there are three types of snakes in the UK. There's the grass snake, which is quite common. There's the smooth snake, which is very, very rare. And then there's the adder. And it's the adder the one we're mostly worried about, because that's the only poisonous snake in the UK. But my advice, from a first aid point of view, is treat all bites from the snake as though it's an adder bite, because you could misdiagnose it, and that would be bad. With the right treatment, 96 to 97% of all dogs survive an adder bite, but it does require getting the right treatment at the right time. So if you avoid any misdiagnosis, treat them all as an adder bite, you can't go too far wrong. Now, if you suspect your dog has been bitten by a snake, there's a couple of things you should and shouldn't do. And the first one is, you shouldn't attempt any first aid. Don't do things like try and suck the poison out or apply a tourniquet. It'll quite often cause more harm than good, and in case of sucking the poison out, it just doesn't work anyway. Best thing to do is get them to a vet as soon as possible. And another thing you shouldn't do is give them antihistamines. Now, yes, you can give your dog antihistamines for snake bites, but you shouldn't just give them to them without talking to your vet first. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail later. Another thing to remember is, while I say get them to the vet as soon as possible, don't just rush down to the vet and turn up. If they have been bitten by an adder and they need the antivenom, not all vets carry the antivenom. So if you ring your vet beforehand, follow their advice, what they may do is redirect you to another vet locally that carries the antivenom, and that'll stop any delays and getting that into your dog. Now, one thing you should try to do is keep your dog still. If you can, carry your dog if it's small enough, because as it runs round, that'll sort of circulate the venom throughout the body. If your dog's too large, I know mine is, then take some comfort in the fact that the bigger the dog, the better the chances of surviving, and that's because there's a smaller dosage per kilogram of body weight. So bigger dogs would need a bigger dose to kill them. Another good thing you should try and do if you can is, if you see the snake, try and take a photograph, because that can be used to help identify the snake and hopefully might not need an antivenom in the first place. Now, in many cases you won't actually see the dog get bitten by a snake at all, but if you see puncture marks or rapid onset of swelling, particularly if that centres around puncture marks, that's a fairly good indication that your dog has been bitten by an adder. You might also see some bleeding around the paws or the face, or also lameness in the dog if it kind of can't walk or is struggling to walk, or it appears suddenly nervous all of a sudden. They're all kind of indications that your dog may have been bitten by a snake, and it's something to think about, particularly in the following situations. Now, between February and October, that's when snakes are most active in the UK. So if you're walking your dog between those months and the symptoms occur either during or about 2 hours after a walk between February and October, then you should be suspicious of a snake bite. Another one is the time of day. So most snakes are seen between 10 AM and 12, where they come out onto the paths in order to sun themselves. And here they're quite exposed. And not only are they exposed to sight, they're actually quite sluggish as well. Because they're cold-blooded, they need to warm up in order to be able to move properly and think properly. So during those sort of times, if your dog spots them, chances are the snake won't be able to avoid contact with your dog and may be forced to defend itself. In the afternoon, when they're a little bit warmer, they're much better at being able to avoid contact with your dog entirely. So if you're walking between 10 and 12, you should be particularly mindful that it could be a snake bite. Now, there are a couple of things you can do to avoid coming into contact with a snake at all. And the first one is avoid areas where adders tend to concentrate. That is areas where there is gorse, heather, or like long marron grass, because that tends to be the natural terrain of snakes. Now, behind me is an area called Yateley Common, and this is kind of known as being a bit of an adder hotspot. And as you can see, it's gorse that dominates the landscape. So we get a lot of adder sightings here, particularly mid-morning. So if you can, either avoid these areas completely or put your dog on a lead when you're walking through these areas, there's a good chance that you will avoid coming into contact with a snake. So a lead is good, but as Mr. Miyagi says, best defence, no be there. Now, if you are unlucky enough that your dog's bitten by a snake, there are a couple of things you can prepare for in a pack in advance which help. There are lots of antihistamines that you can carry, but I would recommend carrying Piriton. And in particular, I'm going to read it out so I don't get this wrong. It's a drug called chlorophenamine. Now, you can use other antihistamines as well, but Piriton is one that's quite often recommended by vets. Now, when I say carry it, I mean carry it in case you can't get your dog to a vet immediately. I wouldn't just give it to your dog unless you can really avoid it. So even if you can't get your dog to the vet, there's a good chance that you can still call them up. And that's what I'd recommend you do. If your dog gets bitten, call your vet. If you can't get the dog to the vet, at least you've got the antihistamines on hand, and under the vet's direction, you can give the antihistamines to the dog. Now, there are times when you might not be able to get hold of your vet. And in that case, you know, it's worth knowing what the dosage is, so you can give it to your dog in a life-threatening emergency. And by life-threatening, I mean the dog's going to die anyway. You've got nothing to lose by trying. So in that situation, if I couldn't get hold of my vet, then I would just give the antihistamines myself. Now, I'm not a vet, so I can't prescribe or recommend this dosage. All I can do is share the source of information that I'm using, and it's from the MSD veterinary website, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. So they recommend the dosage for Piriton is between 0.25 and 0.5 micrograms per kilogram of dog. And they summarise that as saying a dog under 20 kilos can have 1 tablet, and a dog over 20 kilos can have 2 tablets. Now, I did the maths on this, and to me that works out that a dog under 8 kilograms will be getting more than 0.5 micrograms per kilo of dog. So for safety, if I couldn't speak to my vet beforehand, I would say a dog that is over 4 kilograms, between 4 kilograms and 8 kilograms, I would only give them half a tablet. If the dog is much under 4 kilograms, I think you'd really struggle to break the tablet up small enough in order to give the right dose. So I'd speak to my vet beforehand. And it's the same if the dog is over about 32 kilograms. 2 tablets might be enough, but I wouldn't want to go above what that, you know, written dosage is in the website. So again, I'd speak to your vet beforehand and try and do that before you need it, because like I say, if you can't get hold of them for every reason on the day, you'll know what to give them. Now, if you have given your dog Piriton because it's been bitten by a snake, don't think that's the end of it. You do still need to get your dog to the vet, because they need other treatment as well. For example, they might need a saline drip to support them. They might also, well, there's a good chance they'll also need pain relief, because the swelling can be very painful, and they may also need antibiotics to stop any infection. So even if you do self-administer antihistamines, please don't think that's the end of it. Still get your dog to the vet as soon as you can. And that's the end of this video. So I hope it's helpful. I also hope that you never have use of it and never need it. Safe dog walking.